right, let's talk about the chapters you read for today, Exodus part of chapter 7 up through chapter 12. So anything stand out to you there? Anything that you found particularly interesting or something you hadn't seen before?
Well, the hail. I'm kind of confused. How is that like bad for them?
Have you ever been out in a hailstorm?
Yeah, but it struck little.
Okay, well, these were big.
Really?
I'm assuming they were big.
All right.
And hail, if you've ever seen pictures of maybe other parts of the country that get bigger hailstones than we do, of course it destroys cars and property, but in those times it would destroy their crops and their cattle. So it was not just nice little hail coming down like snowflakes. Joel?
After the hail plague, Pharaoh sent and called Moses and said, "This time I have sinned." And he acknowledged, but he still denied letting his people go.
Yeah. Interesting, isn't it, that he seems repentant, and after every plague he says, "Okay, I'll let you go," but then he changes his mind. Yeah, Brandon?
I had a question. It's about God hardening his heart.
Mhm.
Why didn't he just not harden his heart and just let people go?
Okay, that's a good question. First of all, why did God harden Pharaoh's heart? Remember, he told Moses beforehand, "I'm going to send you, I'm going to send plagues on Egypt, but I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart so he will not let them go." Why did God want to do that? Why did he want Pharaoh to not let the Hebrews go?
Because he wanted to punish the Egyptians.
Yeah, he wanted to punish them for their unbelief in the true God, their idolatry. And what else? What else did all those plagues do besides punish Egypt? If Pharaoh had allowed them to go after just one plague, how well known would that be?
Not very well.
But almost everybody who knows anything about the Bible has heard about the 10 plagues, right? And that just brings more glory to God. So we know more about God. We give him glory because of what he did there. We say, what an awesome God he is that he did that.
Was there any like text other than the Bible that had plagues in it? Like the plagues?
Well, other cultures have plagues because plagues happen once in a while. Just like
like the 10 plagues.
Those specific plagues?
Yeah.
Well, the Egyptians don't talk about it in their writings because almost all, I hesitate to say all about anything because there could be an exception. But as far as I know, all ancient cultures, when they talk about their own history, don't talk about any bad stuff that they did. So even when you find these columns that a king puts up and tells about his victories and stuff, even if he didn't win the battle, he still puts on there that he won. Like if it was a draw, he still puts on there that he won. So they don't put anything. The Bible is unique in ancient literature because it tells the bad things that people did who were God's followers. You know, it tells us that Moses being disobedient. It tells us of Jonah being disobedient. It tells us of Samson being disobedient over and over again, and yet he's a hero of the faith. So, and David, I mean, we go on and on. Almost everybody could think of in the Bible that was a hero, a person of God, did stuff that was wrong. But other cultures didn't ever tell about that. In fact, later on, an Egyptian historian by the name of Manetho, I think was his name. This was, I think, just a few hundred years before Christ. He wrote a history of Egypt, and what he wrote was that the Hebrews were kicked out of Egypt because they had leprosy. So that was in their history. So they don't mention the plagues at all. We kicked them out. We didn't want them around because they had leprosy, not because 10 plagues came on us. Okay, good question. Any other observations from these chapters or questions? Yeah, Katie?
Somebody told me that some churches in the United States, some churches only mention like 8 or 9, but you no longer would do that.
Never heard that.
I went to a church that said there were only 8 or 9 because
So they decided not to count one?
yeah, there was something that was
Oh, okay. Well, you know you're in the wrong track if you start taking things out of the Bible because you find them offensive, right? Unfortunately, some people, I guess, do that. Some people want to eliminate the death of Christ as being important because, oh, that's a sacrifice. We don't want any of that. And they call themselves Christians. Anything else? But I've not heard of that one. All right, let's look at the different gods that you designated for the plagues. First, remember that we are in the time of Amenhotep II. He is the pharaoh of the plagues and the Exodus. Yes.
How old is he?
At this time, you mean? I don't think it's any way of knowing for sure. All right, so remember that Moses goes to Pharaoh, and remember, this is the, let's see, what is it, the grandson, step-grandson of Hatshepsut. And so, does he know about Moses? Probably. So when Moses shows up, it's not like some stranger walking in. He knows who he is, especially when he comes in and if he introduces himself. I'm not sure how that went. I am Moses. That's an Egyptian name. What do you mean you're Moses? That's a name of in my royal family. How'd you get that? You're the adopted son of that hated woman Hatshepsut. All right, what do you want? I want you to let the Hebrew people go. Yeah, right. Why should I do that? Well, Yahweh, our God, says for you to let them go. He says, Yahweh? Who's that? Why should I obey him? Never heard of him. So that's kind of how the conversation probably went. So what did Moses do to try to convince Pharaoh that he should listen to him? Remember that first meeting? What did Moses do?
He like turn his staff into a snake.
Yeah, he threw down his staff and it turned into a snake. So how did Pharaoh respond to that?
He got his own magicians.
Yeah, he brought his own magicians in, told them to do the same thing, and did they do it? Yeah, their staffs turned into snakes too. So I guess it all came out even, huh?
Moses' snake swallowed the other one.
Yeah, Moses' snake swallowed up all the other ones. And then Moses picked the snake back up, and it was a staff again. I mean, that's got to freak you out to see something like that. Even seeing the representation of that at Sight and Sound Theater in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Anybody ever been there? When they did, what was it called? Was it called Moses? I think. They show, I don't know how they did that on stage, but it sure looked like it was a snake and he picked it up and it was a staff again. But to actually see that in real life would be really disturbing, I think.
But how do the Egyptian magicians show their staff as snakes?
See, that's a good question. Were they able, through demonic power, to actually change a staff into a snake? I don't know. Some would say that demons can't do that, that Satan can't do that. Others would say that he does have that power. Some say, well, they had a snake inside their hollow staff. When they threw it down, it broke and the snake came out. I don't know. That doesn't sound very convincing. So I would say apparently they had power to be able to do that, to perform that magic through demonic power of some kind. But God's power was greater. Okay? But that's a controversial issue, and we don't know for sure. Okay, so we have the miracle of the snakes. Pharaoh still doesn't give in, and so we have the 10 plagues coming upon Egypt. Here's one list. Some of the words are different than you might see in other lists. So we have the plague of blood, frogs, lice, flies or beetles, pestilence or disease, boils, hail, locusts, darkness, and then finally the slaying of the firstborn. Now, we've talked about some of the gods before. You already have this in your list anyway, don't you? Some of you are trying to write it down. What?
I didn't know we were supposed to write it down.
On your paper, don't you have that already or not? the internet activity page, you have those plagues already listed for you, so you can just copy from there. Or as we go along, you can get it off. We'll get brought up again. Here's, remember Hathor, we talked about, the cow god. Here's Seti the first, getting before the ibis-headed god, Thoth. Remember the ibis, the bird-like beak on that one. Here's Akhenaten and his wife making offerings to Aten. Akhenaten took the name Aten into his name. He changed his name because he thought that the Egyptians should only worship Aten. So he is the pharaoh we'll get to later on that is a monotheist. He tries to make all of Egypt worship only one God. But he's not very successful at it, as we'll see. You know?
There's someone drinking straight from the gutter up there.
Yes. That's right. And that's to demonstrate that Hathor, is the provider of all good things, sustenance for the nation. Here's the bull Apis with the disc between his horns from the side. And here's the god Horus as a hawk. And you can see the crown of Upper and Lower Egypt on the head of Horus. Here's another picture of some of the gods. Here's Bastet, the cat. Here's the scarab pushing the sun. There's some here too that are too small for you to see. Okay, here are some other pictures of gods. Let's see if you can tell who they are. Okay, who do you think that first one is? What do you think, Bill?
Osiris?
No, not Osiris, Grace. Anubis, that's the jackal head. Remember? Anubis, god of the dead. Okay, this next one I don't think we talked about yesterday. That's Geb, G-E-B, Geb. And I'm not sure we talked about this one either. That's Hapi or Happy, H-A-P-I. That wasn't one of the ones we did, was it? So, okay, so that's that god. We'll talk a little bit about him today. This one is Sekhmeter. See the lion's head. We had one yesterday that had a lion's head, didn't we? Who was that? That was Bastet? But she's the cat, isn't she? Oh, that's right, the lion's head, I guess.
Yeah, that's that.
Okay. Okay, what about this one? You should be able to get this one.
Isis?
Right, that's Isis. This one is pictured differently than where we normally see her.
Hathor?
No? Hathor, yeah, no, Hathor is the cow. This one's Newt. Usually, she has the blue dress on, so I guess that's that part. The next guy is Serapis. We didn't talk about him before either. Okay, how about this one? Do you recognize this?
That's Set.
Yeah, that's Seth or Seth with the face that we can't tell for sure what it is. And this last one you should be able to get.
Ra.
Ra, or you could think Horus too because of the hawk head, but this is supposed to be Ra with the sun on his head. I thought it was interesting. Yes, Katie?
I just had a question about two slides of it.
Oh, okay. This one?
Yeah, why does it look like it has an American flag on the bottom?
Where? This one?
Yeah.
Oh, it does kind of. These are just small feathers, and these are long feathers. America was in ancient Egypt. I thought this was interesting. I found this gold statue of the god Amen. Now, one of the things that's interesting when you look at ancient Egyptian religion and then also others is there is this theme or a mythology, if you will, of the mother and child. So in Egypt, we have Isis with her son Horus. But it doesn't begin there. That we go back to Babylon, and we find that Isis and Horus, yes, in Egypt, but also known as Semiramis and Tammuz. Remember Tammuz? We talked about it before. His father, her husband, is Nimrod. And so that mother-child relationship, mother goddess and her child, is something that we're going to see occurs throughout history. So here's Inanna, who is called Queen of Heaven. You can see her wings there. Then we have Ishtar with Bacchus. And again, the wings. Here she has a hat. Both of them have a hat, a divine hat, indicating they are divinity or God. We have Cybele, which has a son, Decius. I think she must be Roman, I think. And she was holding her son here, but it's broken off. I'm not sure if she was holding him by his hair or what, but I think it was more like a basket or something. These don't show the sons, but they do show them as deities, and they do have sons. They're just not pictured with them. Hayden?
I think her nose fell off too.
Yeah, it happens with these old statues. I mean, these are quite old. Then we have, in Greece, Aphrodite with her son Eros. And in Rome, she's called Venus with Cupid. And then out of Rome, we have creeping into the church, Mary and Jesus. You see the similarity between all the statues and the pictures? And notice Mary has on the crown because she is called in the Roman Catholic Church the Queen of Heaven. The same title that has been given to the mother, child, goddess, and God since earliest times. Here's another picture that shows some of the same ones and some different ones. Here's Semiramis and Tammuz. This is Namu and Enki and Sumeria. Isis and Horus. There's Shingmu in Asia. Devaki and Krishna. You've heard of Krishna. Well, he is the son of a goddess. And then Mary and Jesus. Great influence of mythological gods into the Christian church. All right, let's begin looking at the plagues. First one, the Nile turned to blood. All right, what god did you think that was directed against? Brenna?
Hathor,
Why Hathor?
because she brought the Nile flooding.
Okay, she was associated with the flooding of the Nile. What we're going to see as we look at these is there are a number of gods that we could connect, but there's usually one or two that stand out. And so Hathor is a possibility. I think there might be some better ones.
Seth,
Why Seth?
because he is a god of violence and like chaos and stuff.
Okay, well, we could probably put him with all of these in a way, but there's gods that are more specifically attached to the Nile. Nobody has anything else? Nate?
Happy, happy,
Yeah, Happy or Hoppy. Why?
God of the Nile.
He's the god of the Nile. Yeah, you think that might be the one? Yeah. Happy. I think that's probably one of the best ones, one of the two. There's another one that I think might be more specifically directed, and that is Osiris. Why? Because it was said in Egypt, because of the importance of the Nile River, that the Nile River was the bloodstream of Osiris. So God says, oh, you believe that the Nile River is the bloodstream of Osiris. Well, I'll just turn it into blood. I think that's a pretty good knock at Osiris. But you have also Hapi, which is mentioned. He is the god of the Nile. And in fact, the Egyptians who lived in the Nile Valley worship Hapi more than they worship Ra. All right, so those are the two, I think, that are the best for the Nile turning to blood. Any questions? All right, next we have frogs. Can you feel the frogs? Can you hear them? Can you imagine so many frogs that you couldn't walk without walking on frogs? Can you imagine stepping out and having to walk on top of frogs like this? How disgusting that would be. All right, so what god was associated with frogs? Hayden?
said heck.
Yeah, Hecht, or the other ways you can spell it are given here, because she is the god of the frogs. She has a frog face, the god who controls the frogs. So I can imagine, God saying something like, "Oh, you worship frogs. How hard it must be to have to go to the temple where the frog is. I'll give you frogs all over the place, so you don't have to travel. The frogs will just be there. You worship frogs? I'll give you frogs." So many they couldn't walk without stepping on them. And when they died, the plague was over, they all died. Do you imagine having piles of dead frogs around?
Frog legs for days.
Frog legs? Well, they had to shovel them up and put them in piles. How disgusting that would be. All these dead frogs around.
And the smell.
And the smell. Yeah. All right, so that's Hecht. Next we have dust turning into lice. There's dust coming in off of the desert, Sahara Desert. And just in case you've not seen lice, that's what lice looks like. Very small in your hair, and maybe more importantly, that's what the eggs look like that they leave in your hair, called nits. They're little tiny things. I want to ask you if you've ever had lice. It's a very traumatic experience. Even worse, well, I wouldn't say worse, but it's difficult for the person who has to try to pick the nits out, because the nits are attached, and you can't just pick them off. You have to slide them all the way down to the end of the hair, not let it go until you get to the end, and then it'll come off, because it won't come off if you just try to pull it. You got to slide it all the way in. My daughter got lice from a friend of hers when she was, I think, upper elementary school. She had blonde hair, and so it was really hard to even see the lice because they're light colored. And I spent 8 hours one day going through her hair. Her hair was kind of long, so everyone I found had to go all the way to the end of her hair. 8 hours of picking lice. Someone who, what someone's called who gets the lice out of somebody's hair? It's called being a nitpicker, because you're picking the nits. You ever heard somebody called a nitpicker? That means that they pick up little things. That's where it comes from. And the lice combs don't do it. They don't get them all. You have to do it by hand. Even some of the lice shampoos don't necessarily kill all of it, or even the eggs that are there. So it's important to try to get the eggs out. Yeah.
What would happen if you didn't take care?
Then you would get more and more. They multiply. They lay more and more eggs, and pretty soon your head is full of lice.
Would your hair start to fall off too?
I don't know about that. Usually no one waits until that point. You've got to do something because it's so itchy. And they spread. You can't, if you put on a hat that somebody else put on that had lice, you're going to get lice because they go to anything. I mean, even I know that in elementary schools especially, if there are coats hanging next to one another and a kid had lice, it spreads from coat to coat. They spread they're insects, and they jump from one thing to another. Okay, so anyway, that's an awful thing. So what god is this directed against? Who's the god that is being mocked with lice? Anybody? Luke, what do you have?
I have Matt. Because it said, like, keeps the order.
Yeah, that probably would apply to all of them. So what's the specific god that is related to lice? Joel?
Would it be Hathor because of health?
Yeah, again, that could apply to most of these. Anything more specific, Nate?
Jeb.
Yeah, Geb or Seth. Either one of those. Because of being the earth god. Because it was dust. It was dust from the earth that brought the lice. And so that would be an attack on Seth. In addition, Egyptian priests were very heavy into cleanliness. And you're not very clean if you got lice. I mean, that's how you feel anyway. And maybe that's when they started shaving their heads. I don't know. Probably not. But that's what happens to a lot of children. They get their head shaved because that's the way to get rid of the hair that the lice are attached to. You know what the singular of lice is louse. So a louse or many lice. Okay, so I think Seb or Seth or Geb would be the one to put for dust turning to lice. Next, we have blood-sucking flies or beetles. We don't. The words that are translated, we're not sure exactly. So something like something that's sucking blood. All right. So what god would that be related to? Blood-sucking flies or beetles? What do you have, Robbie?
I had Anubis, but
Yeah, not so much Anubis. Well, there's some people, gods are more closely associated with that. Nate?
I'd have to Capri,
Yeah, Kepri. Why?
the god of creation, and
What's Kepri represented as? A beetle. So these could have been blood-sucking beetles, which would be like Kepri's attacking them. Okay, so one of the gods. Kepri, I think, is a good one. And when you look at the beetle, scarab, you'll see the sun there. So in a sense, Ra, the sun god, proved to be helpless before Moses and Yahweh. So Ra, the sun god, and especially Kepri, Khepri, the beetle. All right, so beetles, just suddenly beetles coming in. The dust turned to beetles and or some kind of fly, and they're biting and sucking blood like mosquitoes. So these beetles, when they arrive, were not singing, "I love you, yeah, yeah, yeah." Or maybe they would. They love your blood, yeah, yeah. Okay, the next one is a cattle plague, marine, some say. What would be the gods attacked here?
Apis?
April.
Apis the bull, that's obvious, right? And who else? Who else would be attacked here besides Apis?
Well, it's the cow one that you should.
The cow one, which is named what?
Hathor.
Hathor, right. So there's Apis, and you know what Hathor looks like. Joel?
Could they eat the meat, or was it too disease ridden?
If it's a disease, probably not. Okay, usually I know in this country when there's been murrain or anthrax going through cattle herds, you have to not only kill them but bury them. Otherwise it'll spread more and more.
Okay.
And if people eat it, they will get sick. Okay, next one. Boils. I think this one relates to what Moses did. But what god do you have for boils? Anybody have anything? Caden? Horus. Okay, kind of in a general way. Something more specific, maybe? Nate?
Isis,
Why?
the goddess of medicine and peace.
Yeah, so she's the goddess of healing and did not heal them with the boils. There's another one that relates to what Moses did. You remember how Moses brought about the boils, what he did?
Into dust.
Not dust this time.
Soot.
Yeah, ashes.
Yeah.
So he took ashes and threw them up in the air, and then the wind blew them, and that brought boils to all the people of Egypt. Well, the sprinkling of ashes was something that they were used to seeing. That's something that the Egyptian priests did to propitiate Seth. So they offered ashes to Seth to keep him from bringing calamity on them. And in fact, the opposite took place. The ashes brought calamity. So this will be an attack on Seth as well, I think. Okay, next we have, there's Seth, or Seth Typhon sometimes. Okay, then we have hail and lightning. So fire coming down from the sky. And who is that directed against?
Ra.
Ra, because what?
He's the sun god.
Yeah. Okay, so you could say Ra. Who else? Nate?
Newt.
Newt, because she's the goddess of the sky. Who else? Anybody else? Right?
Horus, because he's the god of sky.
Right? Horus?
Right.
And you could also say Isis. I think it could be any of those or all of those. It also could be a god named Shu that we didn't talk about. He is a man wearing an ostrich feather headdress. Sometimes he has a sun disk on his head, so he's related to the sky as well. And there's Newt in her normal position, so that the sun can rise up through her mouth and go through her body all day long, and then is eliminated at night to go under the earth for the scarab to push it through the earth. Any questions? Okay, next we have locusts. Locusts swarmed over the land. Okay, did you find who was supposed to protect the land from locust plagues? Did you find a God that was supposed to do that? Nate?
What is Seth?
Seth would be involved here because Seth is the god of insects. So that could be Seth. There was one god that was supposed to protect them specifically from locusts, and that was Serapis. So Serapis, I think especially, you could say Seth as well. You could say even Isis, because Isis, in the depictions of Isis, she's holding a locust. Oh, what are you doing, Isis? Make a locust come on all of us just because you have one? Yeah, it could be an attack on her. But I think especially Serapis and Seth. There's a close-up of the locust. And of course, if a swarm of locusts like this comes into an area, they eat everything. They destroy anything, any vegetation. There will be nothing left. They're called an army of locusts for a reason. So devastating. All right, the next one is darkness. Thick darkness covered the land. All right, I think this one's pretty obvious. So what do you say, Robbie?
Ra.
Ra, yeah, the sun god. Where's the sun? Sun god, right? Who else? Riley, haven't heard from you today.
I put wrong.
Is that it?
Yeah.
No more? You're satisfied with one? Luke?
Isis.
Isis. Yeah, Isis is the one who's supposed to protect them, and she's the moon goddess, and so there's an attack on her. Who else, Bill? Newt, the goddess of the sky. I think all those are probably involved here. You have another one, Kate?
Thoth, because he was also involved.
He's also got a moon. Okay, Thoth.
Seth, because you represent darkness.
Okay, that would be a good one too. Seth represents darkness. So this is so dark that you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Have any of you ever been in a situation where you put your hand and you couldn't see your hand? You might hit a cave. It used to be that way in this building. When I'd be here the night before, Mr. Hall put up lights at the end of the hall. I would leave my room at night, and there was no light coming in from outside in the hallway out there. I tried this because I wanted to make sure. I put my hand like this. I could not see it. It was so dark, and I've been walking down the hall to try to get out of here, not knowing if anything is in the hall that I might run into. Trying to find the wall, get next to the lockers, feel along, hoping that nobody left their locker open that I've run into. It was kind of an ordeal every time I left the building late at night. I'm so glad that Mr. Hall put some lights out there so we could see. But that was how it was over the whole land. Can you imagine getting up in the morning and it's dark? I mean, nobody would go anywhere. You couldn't see. Maybe you light a torch or something, but that would be pretty debilitating. So here's Ra, the sun god, and Isis, the moon gods. All right. Any questions about the thick darkness? Yeah, Joel?
Did it just like all of a sudden just go dark?
I guess so. Or I don't know. Maybe it was like I said. It was night and got up and it was still dark.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Or suddenly, like the lights went out. I don't really know how that happened exactly. And I think if I remember right, this one did not extend into the land where the Hebrews were living. So it was kind of like a wall of darkness, I guess. I don't know, you're walking along and all of a sudden you just disappear in the darkness. I'm not sure how that worked. Bill?
This is probably not going to be related, but I mean, which battle was it where God gave them more daylight? Just fighting?
Yeah, where he extended.
Would it be like at the same time, so they're not getting the sun, and the other place is getting the sun longer?
Well, in that case, yeah, he extended the daylight, made the sun stand still. It appeared.
Uh-huh.
And then, of course, that's many years later. So not the same time.
Okay.
This, don't know whether to use clouds or what. It seems more supernatural than that, because clouds would still be light coming through. This is total darkness. So obviously a supernatural thing. All right, the last plague then is the death of the firstborn. Who did you say was being addressed there? The death of the firstborn. Caden? Osiris? Okay, why? Okay, God of the dead. Luke? Hecht?
Yeah.
Okay, why?
I don't remember. But because I don't remember.
Yeah, I can't think of any relationship there. Brenna?
Anubis,
Why?
he is the protector of graves and guides souls and people.
Okay, let me tell you what I think is the best one, and that is Pharaoh himself. The other ones are gods of the dead, but that's all after they're already dead. The Pharaoh was supposed to be the god Horus, and he could not protect his own child. That's an attack on Pharaoh himself. God left that one for last. Okay, for tomorrow, make sure you read the assigned reading in Exodus, and we'll look at Passover.